right into this. So like I said, thank you so much to the people who are watching the recording. Thanks for joining us to talk about cancer insurance. The number one reason probably why we say cancer insurance is so important, because sometimes the biggest pushback that we get on it is, well, that's what their Med Sup is for, that's what their Medicare Advantage is for, to cover costs like that. We want to make it very clear that the majority of costs through a cancer treatment, through the process of healing from cancer, is going to be non-medical. That means that their other insurance is not going to pick it up.
I think the last stat we had on that was like 60% of all the cancer-related costs are non-medical. So.
Yes, exactly. And that's going to come from things like traveling. If you're here in Missouri, like we are, there's a lot of rural towns. There's a lot of places that, like, even for me, we had to drive, 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours to get to the hospital that would be able to treat us for our cancer. So travel and food whenever you're traveling, home care whenever you're gone, all of those sorts of things are not covered whenever you are going through cancer treatment.
Yeah, just kind of give you guys an example, and something I like to just rip off the Band-Aid early with these webinars is that I'm a cancer survivor myself. So a lot of this passion and knowledge I have about cancer insurance is from the lack of me having it.
Yeah.
So just to give you guys an example, like Sadie was saying, some people have to go an hour, 2 hours to go to the nearest doctor. But a lot of the times the oncologist will want to get a second opinion. And a lot of times, let's say that's at the Mayo Clinic. So for us, that's what, 8 hours, something away, 10 hours, something like that. So that's something where you're staying at an Airbnb or a hotel, whatever you guys might like. Bring in all of the kind of support system that you have or that can make it with you. So it's a lot of people having to take off work. That's a lot of days that you have to spend traveling and staying in a hotel, which, if you're smart, you'll pack a lot of groceries, try to save some money that way, but that's still a lot of money that you have to spend on food outside.
Right.
And then what do you do if you got dogs at home, or you need somebody to make sure that your house is being taken care of? Anything like that while you're gone is something to consider for those out-of-pocket expenses that not really something you think of when you first get that cancer diagnosis.
Right.
You expect all of the medical bills. You're like, yeah, I'm getting a bunch of scans, I'm getting a bunch of blood work. My insurance is taking care of a good chunk of this. But you still have that part remaining. And I know that's a slide we'll get into here in a little bit, that you'll have a chunk remaining that's on you to pay that is medical. And then on top of all that, that's the stuff that Medicare insurance just isn't going to pay for at all.
Yeah, I've even heard
cancer insurance.
Yes, unless you have cancer insurance. And one thing that I have heard from someone that I know and care about, had their father had cancer whenever they were a child, and they were farmers, and they had to, farming doesn't stop. It can't just stop whenever that's your income. So while they were going through cancer treatment, they had to pay someone to make sure that the farm was still running, to keep up with their land and everything like that. So cancer insurance is going to cover the majority of the cost, which is going to be things that you aren't obvious, that you don't expect. Even things like whenever you're going through treatment, and if you lose your hair, if you want wigs, that's a comfort. That's something that, most people want. And so it can even cover costs like wigs and things like that. But yeah, it's going to be non-medical costs that we will see.
Speaking of wigs, I'm just thinking, my friend Bud, he had cancer when we were like 18 or something. And when he lost his hair, he was already a hat guy, but he was a full send hat guy. So this man, we bought him hat after hat after hat. And I'm just thinking, like, dang, if he would have had cancer insurance, he would have had a lot more hats.
Right, he would have had a lot more hats, which was something that he held on to. That was something that brought him comfort and brought him joy throughout his treatment, which we also know, there's science behind how you mentally and emotionally feel can help your physical recovery as well. So it's more than just bringing him joy. It is helping him get through the process. Yeah, I love that.
So kind of going over to, like we talked about, the leftover costs that are involved with either having a Medicare Advantage or Medicare supplement. So these are the ones that we know are going to happen, right? But we don't think about the volume it's going to happen. So with MA, remember, you got your copays, you got your specialist costs, but you're going to be seeing that specialist a lot. You're gonna have a lot more things that you need to pay that copay on. All your different scans, your blood work, everything you could possibly get something charged to your Medicare for, all that stuff feeding into that maximum out of pocket that you have to look at, you're gonna hit it. Like I always draw it back to my experience with this. I've had a clean bill of health now for 5 years.
Ooh.
Until last year, thank you. 4 years in a row, I hit my maximum out of pocket. That was after I had cancer. So the year or year and a half that it was all going through the treatments, I was hitting those max out of pockets plus the next 4 years.
Right.
So that's something where if you had a good lump sum cancer policy, you can just start to know those costs. Like I put everything into not a HSA, the flex spending card.
Yes.
Every year I just kept loading that thing up because I knew I was going to hit those out of pockets.
Yeah.
If you have a lump sum, you can still kind of reallocate some of your funds over to one of those. I think those are not available for seniors now. I'm saying this out loud. Anyway, but like, just different ways to move those funds around so you know that you have money to spend on something like a cancer treatment. And then looking at a med sup, we all know that unless you're on a plan F, you're going to have your Part B deductible that you have to pay. So you're going to be looking at that. And then if you're on like a plan N, you're going to have some more co-pays that you got to look at for your doctor visits, stuff like that. And then the big takeaway from this slide and what we wanted to really dive into a little bit more is, yes, you kind of expect this other things, right? We know it's going to be a few $100s or a few thousand on an MA, whatever it might be. But the Part D is a huge aspect of this because yes, your drugs are going to be covered more times than not, like you get everything taken care of, but because they're covered doesn't mean they're affordable.
Right.
At all. So the other thing, before we move on to the next slide, because I think we get into the Part D a little bit more, is just the experimental treatments.
Right.
So a lot of these aren't going to be necessarily approved by your insurance carrier, but this could be something that is make or break for your cancer treatment. Or you could have exhausted other kind of options and the only thing that's available is some kind of experimental treatment that's not covered. And with cancer insurance, we're always saying just to have something where the financial aspect is not something you want to have to worry about within your treatment process. So getting a lump sum, getting some insurance with cancer is going to help out. But let's dive into that Part D some more.
Yes, most definitely. And we also do have someone saying that they can't hear us. Again, can you guys let us know in the comment box if you are able to hear us or not, so that way we can see if maybe we still have some issues. It looks like everything is good on our end, but just let us know. Okay, so you guys can hear. Awesome. Okay, sounds good. Thank you for letting us know.
So this is a huge selling point of why you need cancer insurance. If you're not worried about the out-of-pocket costs, like let's say you're a very well-off person, but you still are like, well, what other reasons might I need this? Because like I can afford a hotel stay for a few days or a few weeks. Looking at the kind of crazy costs that go along with some of these common drugs that are taken for very common cancers. So your Part D coverage will pay a certain amount, and then you have your catastrophic threshold. That this is all stuff that you're going to have to pay. And Galen Hendricks was actually the one who shared this slide with us during one of her presentations. The queen of the bundle, y'all might know her from the online, any kind of training she does. But she highlighted all these because they're very common forms. So prostate cancer, breast cancer, leukemia, stuff like this is on here. And something I like to point out is my type of cancer is on here, which I was shocked because it's not necessarily a super common thing, but it's multiple myeloma. You might see it there at the second from the bottom is Revlimid is the drug I had to take. And let's say I was on a Part D, I'm going to be responsible for $14,000.
Right.
And this is for a cycle of these drugs. You might have to take 2 or 3 cycles. I did 3-4 rounds of Revlimid. This is my chemo pill, so I didn't do like the normal type a lot of people are used to. Some of them are oral medications. So I was responsible for $10,000. I didn't have this plan here, but under 65 or not on Medicare, a lot of times can get kind of different grants that are available to help them out with these drugs. A lot of the times, one of the disclaimers on these grants are you can't have Medicare. So you definitely want to look to see if something's available like that for them if they do end up getting a cancer diagnosis. But a lot of times it's not. And a lot of times, yes, they're covered. But as you see here, $8,000 on the cheap end of one of these drugs on this sheet. And
Right.
this is just a lot of different drugs. There's more out there. They might do something that's more in the hospital, but this is just another thing to consider extra coverage for.
Yeah, absolutely. Really great point. So how does cancer insurance pay out the benefits, pay out the benefits? So we talk a lot about lump sum style plans. There are other sorts of plans. They're not as common anymore. Most plans are moving towards this lump sum style because it just makes a lot more sense, honestly, in the way that the benefits are paid out. But I'll kind of let you talk a little bit about what a lump sum is.
Yeah, so real quick, I'll touch on the other style of plans, more of the pay-per-service type plan. You might be more familiar with it, like on the Aflac side of things, is a very popular
Yes.
one, which is like you get a diagnosis, you get this amount of money, you get this scan, you get this amount of money. And it's a lot of math, and you never know exactly what your max benefit is.
Mhm.
A little hard to sell a client on that because they don't know exactly how much money they're paying for.
Right.
Where a lump sum plan, which a lot of the new plans that are being built today are based around a lump sum, is you get cancer diagnosis, you get X amount of dollars. So they can really kind of draw a line to, okay, well, if I were to get cancer, this $20 to $50 is going towards that 10K that I'll get whenever I get a cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
And I say whenever because the statistics are kind of bad. All right, so it's 1 in 3 people will get cancer. Sadie, luckily I think we're good. I got you taken care of there. But so I'm looking at different things like that of like, okay, it's a lot of times if you live long enough, the sad truth is you're kind of getting more susceptible to cancer. And folks over 65 are such a large chunk of that. That's something they really need to consider. And the lump sum style plans are easier to explain. They're easier for a client to draw a straight line to say, yes, I do want this because I would like to have $15,000, $20,000 if I were to get a cancer diagnosis.
For sure. It's just so much more straight lined. It's one less thing that they have to worry about. They don't have to worry about claim after claim after claim. They just get the check and that is their money to spend how they need to during their cancer diagnosis. It's anybody who has gone through or walked with someone that goes through this knows that, you know, sometimes the insurance side of things can really be a pain and can add additional stress, and not just while you're going through it, for years to come. And a lump sum style really helps take out a lot of that stress because you just have the funds straight to your bank account.
I'll give another story time here because that's what I do.
Sure, yeah.
This is something where if I would have had a lump sum cancer policy, I'll tell you, I turned one down when I was 27 and I got diagnosed a year later. So, oops. But if I would have had this, I had a $36,000 bill from the Mayo Clinic for one of these treatments I did. It was a stem cell collection. So when we were going through that, they said everything was approved from my insurance, and I still at the end of it had a $36,000 bill. I fought that the next 2 years. So every single month I was calling Mayo, asking them to push it out while Anthem continued to look into it. I had an Anthem group plan at that point. We kept fighting it. We kept fighting it. This was on my mind for 2 straight years. Once a month, I had to think about, I owe these people $36,000.
Right.
And luckily, at the end of it, Anthem decided that yes, they would cover that, and it got wiped away. I ended up paying like 2 months worth of it. I think I paid like $200-300, and then they sent it back to me.
Sweet.
But I can't express to you how stressful that was for the next 2 years after my diagnosis, talking through that constantly.
Yeah.
So that's something I could have wiped away and said, okay, here's $36,000, kept fighting it because I didn't believe it was true, and then get that money back or start paying that earlier so I didn't have to deal with the possibility of being sent to collections for $36,000.
Absolutely. Yes, exactly. So like he said, this just helps people, gives them some sort of comfort and gives them some reassurance in a time that just feels, you know, very unpredictable and a little scary. Alrighty, let's see. So We do have a question about how to present it. First, Terry did ask, does Medicaid help with cancer?
Yeah, so a lot of their like co-pays and stuff like that are just non-existent, right? Especially like if they're on Medicaid or a D-SNP plan, something like that. Um, but again, it comes down to the more out-of-pocket cost. And if
Yeah.
somebody's on Medicaid, the sad truth is that they might not be able to afford something like this, or getting a large lump sum of cash might bump them out of Medicaid status.
Mm,
So you kind of have to look at that, look at their finances pretty tightly to see if maybe a small policy would still keep them in Medicaid status if they were to get it. It doesn't build the cash value other than if you get diagnosis, then suddenly you have a large lump sum of cash. So you do have to look at that a little bit more in
yeah.
detail. Typically it's not something we see a lot with the Medicaid folks because they do have a lot of these costs paid for. The out-of-pocket costs are what we really worry about. So
Yeah.
it's a tough one for the people with Medicaid. I'm not going to lie to you. We can kind of dive into that and talk through that a little bit more whenever we do the follow-up, Terry.
Yeah, perfect. That's a really great question. And then another great question that he has is how to present without sounding
Ooh.
like you're trying to scare them.
Yep.
So glad you asked. So we will talk about how to bring this up in conversation because, like Terry said, it can be a scary, excuse me, it can be a scary conversation.
Yep.
It can be something that feels a little too heavy to bring up in a conversation that you're having with someone. And again, like the last thing you want to do is freak them out and scare them into having it, because that's not a look good for you and your brand, but also it's not going to be a policy that stays on the books. It's going to be canceled. So the first thing that we say is make sure that you are cross-selling during your fact-finding process. So in your appointment, the time whenever you're going through, you're talking about the health history, you're talking about their family's health history, you're talking about things that they are concerned about with their health. Those are going to be the times in which you are able to cross-sell these other things. So whenever you're already talking about their health history and everything like that, whether it be on a form or you're doing it in conversation in your fact-finding process of your appointment, if they mention something around cancer, their family has cancer, they had cancer a while back, or it's a concern of theirs, bring it up then. Let them know that you have something to offer in that place, might be something good for them to sign up on. One thing that Bobby Richardson, he is someone that was worked for MMG, McNerney Management Group. He was one of the presidents. He's now retired, but one thing that he used to do back in the day was let people know. He would put this in the conversation. Now, no matter what you do, do not cancel your cancer insurance policy. If it's money that you're worried about, if it's finances, if it's anything that you're worried about, we can work around that. But make sure that your cancer policy is something that you always keep on the books. So sometimes that's one way to bring it up. And also educating them. I have this. Yes, ask about your personal concerns. Just letting them know, hey, I have this. And one way that you can do that is just bunch it in with all of the products that you offer.
Yeah.
So if you're sending out mailers, if you're sending out whatever it may be, putting it in your newsletter, whatever it may be, making sure that you are keeping it in front of them in a non-confrontational way, like those mailers, like something like that, putting it on, talking about it on your Facebook page, saying, hey, this is something that I offer for you in a time of, in case you ever need it. Highlighting what you already offer, same way that you would with dental or hospital indemnity or something like that. And then again, bringing it up whenever it's relevant in their conversation that you have.
Something to do, help highlight all the different stuff that you have. A few really great tools that we offer here. So like our AMP pieces that we have, those are pre-built things that say, I offer cancer insurance. We have one of my favorites that I definitely feel is slept on and so underused is our sales toolkits. And there's one specifically for cancer. Has a few different flyers. A lot of folks still give a folder or a binder to their clients with all the information they need. Put that in there. It's more of a passive way to put that in front of them. But then when you're reviewing that and your follow-up appointment with them, you say, hey, did you check out your binder? Did you see this information in there? I
Yes.
want to make sure that you're aware of everything I offer.
Mm-hmm.
So one way or the other, they're knowing you do that.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned Facebook, which I love to death. You know, guys know I do that Medicare Cafe Facebook page.
Yeah.
See my face on there too much probably. But what you can do is use our social media kits that we have pre-built as well. So there's posts, there's blogs that you can link to. So we have a specific one for like Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but we have a more generic just cancer media kit that's available on that sales toolkit as well. I know that's stuff that we're going to attach to that follow-up email.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely check that out. I feel like it's super underused, and that's something I recommend to everybody who's trying to highlight some services they do use.
For sure. And one thing to keep in mind, getting a no is better than them saying I didn't know. We know someone that was in the Dan Mangus. He is he works for senior marketing specialist, vice president, and he of sales, and he used to sell insurance back in the day. And one story that he would tell is he worked with this lady for a really long time, really great relationship. One day she came into his office and said, hey, I thought you said you'd always take care of me. And he said, well, yeah, of course. She says, do you offer cancer insurance? And he was like, oh, yeah. Starts pulling out all the information. She was like, well, it's too late. I got diagnosed and I realized that cancer insurance was a thing. And he said that's the last time that he ever allowed that to happen. So you asking, and even if you awkwardly sort of kind of bring it up, which might happen the first couple times, you'll get your flow down.
Right.
You just need to practice it. Having them say no is better than them saying, I didn't know you even had it. It's not their responsibility to know what they have, what you have. It's just their responsibility to answer. It is your responsibility to let them know. So even if it's kind of awkward, just get into the groove of practicing to bring it up. A few other ways. Telling your own cancer story is one way to make it a little bit less scary. You opening up and being vulnerable and talking about, the time you had cancer or your loved one had cancer, and talking about kind of like Clayton and times where cancer insurance would have come in handy, or times if you did have a cancer policy, how it did come in handy. Being able to talk about that and using your own story is something that can make people a little less worried, and it can make you feel like more of a safe place to be able to talk about something that is pretty sensitive. Makes it a little bit more relatable if that's something that they've already been through. And then like you said, Terry, you don't want to scare them into it. You need to be aware of scaring them into this fear tactics to make the sale. This is a very emotional thing. And so if you just want to educate them, honestly, the facts are already kind of freaky enough.
Yeah.
There's no need for you to scare them even more. So just educating them, letting them know their risks and how something like this can help them, but avoiding freaking them out and scaring them into it, because whenever that fear kind of fades away after that appointment, they're going to cancel it.
Yeah, fear is a very fleeting thing. Think about it. Like, a lot of us might be afraid of ghosts or afraid of the dark, but what happens whenever you turn the lights back on? You're no longer scared of the dark.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So that's a very fleeting thing, where if that's how you got them on this policy, as soon as you're gone and they've had some time to think about it and they see their bills start coming in, they might look at, well, what can I cut? And that's going to be one of the first things they look at.
Yes.
A lot of the, like we said, statistics are scary enough. So it's kind of how you present them. If you present it very serious and scary and you're talking to them like this and then you're getting freaked out, it's going to be a little scary.
You have to have this or it's going to be, you know what I mean? That sort of thing.
But just talking through it with them, I wouldn't say it's not scary. It's just kind of how that you're presenting the information. And we talk about, you'll get in the rhythm. You'll kind of figure out what you're doing with these products. Think back to your first Medicare supplement or Medicare Advantage sale. How'd that go? Was it perfect? Was it super smooth and you nailed every second of it? I bet there's like 3 of you out there who did that.
Yeah.
But outside of that, we all hit bumps in the road. I can't think of my first webinar anymore. I don't want to, because it was terrible. And now, like, you get through those things. You have to just kind of work through that, practice it. It's like a muscle. You guys know that with sales stuff, that you just have to keep doing it, and it becomes part of your process.
Yes.
And if you're going to pick any ancillary product to start with, cancer insurance.
Cancer is
Please.
yes, is a very good one. So beware of those fear tactics. And then again, remember, it's not your client's responsibility to know what you offer. It is your responsibility. And cancer is one of those things where it's like you want to make sure that you let them know that you offer it as soon as possible, so that way you don't run into a situation where again they need it and they no longer can have it, and you just never know. So making sure that people know that, keeping yourself in front of them just in general with those Facebooks, with all your different marketing techniques and all that jazz. You can sneak cancer, showing that in cancer insurance in there. And again, know is better than I didn't know.
Yeah, this is again another story real quick about our buddy Mike Roth over at Senior Insurance Marketing. A lot of you guys might know him as well. He had a very similar story of somebody came to him that he was very good. He always mentions cancer insurance, and he didn't one time. And of course, that's the one that comes to him and said, I have a cancer diagnosis. What do I do? This is something that always brings that kind of pain on the agent or on you guys out there, that if I don't offer this and somebody tells me they do that, and that you have a contract for that, you're like, why didn't I offer that to them? Why didn't I think about this?
Yeah.
No, it's not necessarily the same emotion that you have with like a dental product. You might feel bad, but we all know how financially devastating cancer diagnosis can be. So it's super important to make sure if you're going to bring up one of them, this is the top one in my book.
Yes, most definitely. Another thing that we don't have on here before we go to the next slide is sometimes people like to bundle. So if you're selling someone a hospital indemnity plan, you can tack on other riders. Sometimes cancer is one of those. We used to say, hey, go ahead and tack on a cancer policy. It's the same cost whether you get an individual or if you get, a rider on a hospital indemnity plan. We have since changed our stance, and that's because if someone cancels their hospital indemnity plan, that cancels all of their riders, including their cancer insurance. So even if you're selling like a hospital indemnity plan, you see the rider on there and it catches their attention, you can say, hey, this is something that we can add. I'm going to write you a separate policy so that way that is protected in a different way than maybe some of these other riders might be. And that way, if you cancel your hospital indemnity plan, it won't cancel your cancer insurance. Since those are two very important things. And you want to make sure that you have that cancer policy on the books for sure. So just keep that in mind. It is the same cost whether you get an individual or if you get it on the rider on a hospital indemnity plan,
right,
for the most part,
yep.
Right? Yes.
Yep.
So yeah, just keep that in mind.
And the next one we'll get into carriers, because if you are familiar with these EAP processes, yes, a rider's quick, it's easy. I understand why agents do it. But if you're familiar with these processes, a lot of them are super easy and super fast anyway. So like Aetna, for example, that's our top cancer insurance recommendation. You go to the same place that you go to write an Aetna Med Sup app, and you just click a different drop down and you're there.
Mm-hmm.
The application process is very similar. The signature process is the same. So you might be familiar with how to sell one of these plans and not even know it. But all you have to do is click that other drop down. Sadie and I, we did a walkthrough with one of our agents a while back, and we both, like, I look at applications, that's what I do, I kind of look at those processes, but I hadn't looked at the EAP process for Aetna.
Mm-hmm.
Sadie is doing trainings, doing videos like this, doesn't see those applications the same way.
Never, yeah.
We sat down, what we figured out, 10 minutes?
So easy, I could have done it,
yeah,
like by myself. It was very, very, very easy. You can't miss it.
Our agent resources team, if you're worried about, well, I just want to see it.
Right.
Great, call me, let's do it. I'll be happy to do that for anyone, anytime, no matter how long it takes.
Mm-hmm.
But carriers, these are what we're recommending. So Aetna just recently bumped up the commissions, they bumped up kind of the benefits, and they have one of my favorite riders that are on there, and it's laid out right at the beginning. So it's a reoccurrence benefit that they offer. So you get your cancer plan, $4 or $5 more. This is that slam dunk rider that I always are suggesting putting it on there, because if you're afraid of getting cancer once, you're for sure going to be afraid of getting it twice.
Yeah.
And with the reoccurrence benefit, some of that benefit amount after a few set years, there's a breakdown of over a 10-year period, you can get a full cancer benefit back, because they know that you're more susceptible to getting it again, or that if you're at a higher risk, they're going to pay a little bit less, but after a few years, you're going to get that full benefit again.
Yes.
So I love Aetna, competitively priced, great benefits on there, good riders, and then they have a 5-year look back. So this is great for people who have had cancer like myself that were 5 years removed from this. The next one I always mention is Mutual of Omaha, because huge brand name that everyone knows and loves. Main drawback, and I'll get the negative out of the way, is they have a 10-year look back. So totally fine for folks who have never had cancer in their life,
Right.
but you do have to consider that.
Right.
So if you're going to take a couple of these, those are the two I would make sure that you have.
And Mutual of Omaha is probably going to cost a little bit cheaper, right?
That is the biggest selling point I have for Mutual. As far as the competitive rates go, this is going to be the most competitive rate. So in your kind of fact finding or appointment process with somebody, you can kind of feel out, right? If they're wanting a big brand name and they're willing to pay more to get something more, or if they're more price conscious.
Yeah.
Now, both of these are big brand names, but it's more so of, okay, do you want to have more riders and more ability to do different things with this?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you want to have it and you want to pay the least amount possible for it?
Right.
So between these two, you've got both those avenues covered. But kind of another one that I want to get into is GTL, 5-year look back. So we're in a short look back period, and they have some awesome bells and whistles on there. So this is what makes me think like almost an MA style plan where they throw more stuff on there for you to draw you into the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Something that GTL offers is the TGen testing. TGen is like a DNA sequencing testing. Sounds very sci-fi, but it's super real and can really help either identify if you're at risk for certain types of cancer. And there's certain types, I believe it's certain types of breast cancer that based off of the DNA sequencing, they treat you separately or they treat you a different way. So your treatment process could be very different. And I'm not 100% sure of what these costs are. I've seen everything online from $800 to like $2,000 to get one of these kind of DNA tests done.
Without insurance, right?
Yeah, you're just paying for that.
Yeah.
But it's included with GTL, completely free, doesn't take away from your benefit. This is something that's just included in there. And then you'll have a consultation after you get that, talking through your results of your TGen test.
Yes.
Now, again, GTL is famous for having a bajillion riders. So they have everything on there. You can get dental on there, I'm pretty sure. You can get hospital confinement coverage. There's so many riders. It's always going to be amazingly customizable. And they do offer 2 separate plans. One's going to be a more of an old plan that's a cancer, heart attack, or stroke. So you can pick one of the 3 or all 3 of those that you want on there. It's going to be a little bit lower cost, and that doesn't include the TGen.
Mm-hmm.
Or they have what we kind of promote more for them is the precision care, which we have highlighted here. It's going to cost a little bit more. It's on the higher end, but like we said, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it that is extra for a client.
Yes, absolutely. People who want to be really thorough, like with, their cancer coverage and all that sort of stuff. So yeah.
And the dollar amounts are going to be the same as far as benefits go. They vary a little bit as how much you can change them. Age brackets change. Outreach team can look into that with you as well. I could rattle off all of that information right now because I stare at these constantly, but I'm not going to bore you guys with that. Just know you can get them covered very well with these 3 carriers.
Yes, absolutely. And hey, if you just want to have 1 or 2 on your books, something to offer them, a lot of times people just have 1, but whatever it may be, our team can help you look at those and kind of decide which one might be best for your business, which one might be best for your selling process and your clientele and all that sort of stuff, because you have some really great options here. But yeah, we can also help with that if that's something that you were concerned about.
And on the next slide, we'll get into that EAP process and the kind of how.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all have sat through this many times, some of you, this is your first time, so thank you all for coming again.
Yeah.
But you know the why, you understand it. A question I asked on our Facebook group a little bit ago was, are you selling ancillary products and why or why not? So a lot of people said, no, they're not, because they understand the why, just not the how.
Yeah.
And we kind of touched on this a little bit of, you probably already know how and just don't know it.
Right.
So like Aetna's quick drop down to switch from their med sup. Mutual of Omaha, same idea. The EAP process is very similar. GTL, some of you might be writing the hospital indemnity right now. And again, it's just, I think 3 or 4 lines down that you're just clicking precision care, or it's up actually. That's how often I look at GTL's thing. So there's Elite, the hospital indemnity plan, like 2 bars up, precision care, boom. Then you have the plan on there. So you probably are already familiar with this, but For agents who still like paper, they do have those available. I just highly suggest learning EAP processes. It'll make your appointments faster. There's less room for mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of carriers are switching to not even offering paper
Right.
applications.
Mm-hmm.
So get used to it. It's going to be a thing going forward. Agent Resources and myself, always happy to walk you through those your first time getting on the portals.
For sure.
We can do a dummy account and make sure that works for you just fine.
Yeah, sometimes all it takes is, you just want to see it. You just want to
Yeah.
see the process done. And yeah, you guys do that all the time. You do it all day, every day. So
Yeah.
please feel free to call us and someone will walk you through that.
Now the next is, okay, I know why, I know how to write it, but what do I do when they actually need to claim this?
Right.
Because that's the big fear of like, okay, I don't know what to do. Now I'm stressed out, the person's stressed out.
Right.
These claims processes are so much easier than I ever could have imagined. These three carriers are also very reputable and pay their claims quickly, very easily. So nothing to worry about with these three. But a lot of times what that's going to be required is this pathology report from your doctor. They're going to be familiar with getting that over to you. So you just have to request that pathology report from your diagnosis, like the initial diagnosis.
Mhm.
And then some of them have different like clauses of like, well, if you didn't find it through a pathology report, you found it elsewhere, just need proof of how you got diagnosed. Right. And then a carrier specific form, very easy to find on the websites. We have resources put together to help tell you where to go for those.
Mm-hmm.
And Sadie actually put one together recently that breaks down the how to get on the EAP process, a few highlights, and how to get those claims taken care of step by step, specifically for these three carriers because we thought it was that important.
Yes, for sure. So super easy. So glad that you guys joined us today. Please feel free to ask any questions. We'll open it up. Ask all the questions that you would like. I have to run to an appointment, but awesome. Thanks, Pam. Thanks for joining us. If you have any questions, if you want anything clarified from what we said, go ahead and ask. Feel free to. We kind of give you the 10,000 foot overview in these webinars. If this is a conversation that you want to continue, if hopefully this webinar convinced you that it's as important as we think it is, feel free to call us as well or wait for that follow-up call. We love to talk about this. We want to make sure that you are helping your clients in the most well-rounded way, and we think that cancer insurance is one really big way that you can do that.
Yeah, and again, I'm an open book. So if you have any specific questions about like, well, what does that process look like for someone who is going through this treatment? What might they want to do? I can kind of give you my insight and then my insurance insight of knowing how these products work.
Yeah.
So combining the two with your ability to sell, we can get this figured out so you can have a good plan.
For sure.
And I just feel like this is a huge opportunity for a lot of agents to follow back up with their old book.
Mm-hmm.
So just because you didn't offer to them in that first appointment, or you've got a book of business, but you've never once talked to them about cancer insurance, I highly suggest looking back at those folks and doing some kind of campaign of just following up with them, letting them know, hey, I just recently picked up this new style of product, a cancer insurance product. And I wanted to make sure that you're aware that I have this.
Yeah.
And that could be just a good touch point, a good mailer, a good flyer if they come in your office and just grab a piece. However, you might want to get that in front of them. But I feel like a lot of you are sitting on, more commissions or more of a gold mine than you might realize as far as getting some wealth out of or some worth for your agency, while also taking care of the clients with the best value-based product I think that's out there.
Yes, absolutely. And I think whenever it comes down to bringing it up, because it can be such an awkward conversation, I bet you as the agent feel more pressure about that than what the client would experience. They know that you're there to help them out with everything. Why would cancer not be involved in that? So if you have the right heart behind it and you're bringing it up, just letting them know that you have it, it probably won't be as awkward and as weird as you think it is. But again, even if it is, it's more important that they know that you have that, even if it's not as graceful as you want it to be, than you being scared to bring it up and then them needing it. It's too late.
For sure. So something to consider would be you're gonna hit some bumps in the road when you're first offering these, right? Fight through it, work through that process. And also, I know Sadie and I have said this before, but you're there to sell insurance at that appointment. the client knows they're coming to you to buy insurance. So by offering them more insurance, you're not doing anything negative.
Yeah.
You're there doing your job, and they've come to you as their advisor wanting some coverage. They want insurance from you. Make sure they know everything that you've got.
Right, exactly. And like Terry said, you know, sometimes it's not that, well, it's not that I can't bring it up. I just don't want to scare them. And that totally makes sense. And honestly, that tells me that you already have, you know, you'll be in the
Have
right
the right
mindset
mindset, yeah.
saying, you know, and you won't come off across scary. Cancer is scary
Yeah.
on its own. So just educate the way that you would educate any other thing. And yeah, what happened? What happened?
A hospital cost can be a scary thing if you're
Yeah, hospital
presenting
for sure.
like you could be in the hospital for 7 days.
Mhm.
Your insurance won't pay this, and you're going to have to pay $500 a day while you're there for 6 days.
Yeah,
You can deliver anything scary.
right.
Tacos without cheese.
That actually is scary, okay?
It's just like anything you could present scary. So if you're coming from a right place of like, hey, you know, there is some cost that would be out of pocket for that. You know, there is a lot of that's going to be taken care of with this core product we're putting you on. But I want to make sure that you're aware of some other things that could come up, that about 60% of the cost is related is not going to be what's covered with this core product.
Yes.
And I offer something to help take care of that. And we can look into that if that's something you would like to look into.
Yeah, for sure.
Boom, done.
Jessica was asking, can you please send out the recording? Yes, we will send out this recording in the follow-up email, so you will receive that, and you should get the recording. And if for whatever reason you don't receive the email, one, talk to us. We'd be happy to send it to you. And two, we always put our recordings on our YouTube page as well. So Senior Marketing Specialist on YouTube, it will also be there.
Want to do any more research? Check out that follow-up email. I know there's going to be a lot of good pieces on there. Something specific, another piece that I want to highlight would be our SMS University videos that do product walkthroughs on the main 3 that we talked about today. So you can learn a little bit more specifics about that product, but do not hesitate to call us, ask us questions about how the product lines up, what it looks like in your area, anything like that.
Yes. Alrighty, guys, looks like we don't have any more questions. Thank you so much for joining us. We really hope that we gave you some info that maybe you didn't know, or we affirmed some things that you do know. We are your cheerleaders. We are here to help you, and we are your back office. So if you need any help, hopefully that wasn't too loud whenever I slammed that. That was very passionate. But yes, we're here to help you, and we're here to help you build your portfolio, do whatever you need to do to make sure that you are out there and building your business and helping your clients. So yes, answer that phone call when we call you, and check out that email with all the resources. But do you have anything else to add before we get out of here?
So.
Awesome. Alrighty. Thank you guys so much. We're
Thank
so
you.
happy that you joined us. Yeah. Have a good day.
Bye, y'all.